Armed Forces Day is a relatively new addition to the annual calendar, introduced in 2009 as an opportunity to show our support for the men and women who make up the armed forces community. All of those who are currently serving, our service families, the service charities, our veterans, and of course our cadets. As a nation, we are remarkably fortunate in the outstanding contribution that our armed forces make to supporting and sustaining the lifeblood of our country, in their role of defending the United Kingdom of its interests around the clock and around the globe. Today, the breadth of activity that contributes to our national security has never been greater, whether it be on peacekeeping missions, providing humanitarian aid, responding to disasters both home and abroad, combating terrorism or taking on drug smugglers in their own backyard. And this last year, we've seen the largest deployment of servicemen and women in peacetime, providing vital support in a number of key areas as part of the national response to the COVID pandemic. The long and renowned heritage and contribution of Her Majesty's Armed Forces is envied across the world. But in all of this, it is indisputably the men and women who serve, and those who have served, that are recognised and respected for the complete professionalism with which they carry out their duties, wherever and whenever they're called to do so. How very fitting it is, therefore, that we do have a national day set aside now to pay tribute to our armed forces and publicly acknowledge and celebrate the unconditional courage and commitment with which they are prepared to put themselves in harm's way to provide us with a secure country where we can live and be safe. I count myself most fortunate to have had more than 30 years' service with the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. I also have a son currently serving with the British Army, and perhaps through this I'm speaking with my own particular sense of admiration and respect for everything our armed forces does. So whether it be as regular servicemen and women or as reservists with the additional commitment alongside a civilian career, whether it be as a service family and the sometimes tough and ongoing sacrifices made by them, whether it be as a veteran standing with pride in the knowledge of the distinguished service they have given to their country in times past, or whether it be as a cadet with the valuable contribution that they make in their local community. All today are thanked, applauded and saluted for their part in making us so very proud of them for the selfless contribution that they make and have made as members of our wider Armed Forces family.
I joined the Air Cadets in 2015. I was originally in the Scouts and I wanted a new challenge and something new to experience. And I thought the Air Cadets was a way of learning new things in a place that I would not get the chance to do otherwise. For example, I've had the chance to fly a plane, I've gone on Britain's Got Talent, I've done first aid courses and cyber and radio, things that you wouldn't get the chance to do elsewhere. Armed Forces Day is a great way to show our support and appreciation for the whole Armed Forces community. So this includes active service troops and their families, reservists, veterans and also cadets. It's a great way for a morale boost and it's also a very important day for cadet forces.
Today we acknowledge the debt owed to the men and women of our armed services. They come and have come from our community and from communities very much like our own across Britain. It is their task, quite simply, to put themselves in harm's way to protect us from danger. Inverclyde is very much a maritime community, so the Royal Navy is especially relevant to us. Our river, the Clyde, and the seas beyond have shaped the lives and work of our people here for generations, in peace and in war. Inverclyde has played its part in the story of the Royal Navy. As an island nation, the Navy plays a vital role in securing our trade with the rest of the world. Every hour of every day of every year, this silent service ensures the flow of the trade we rely on. And too often, they are the forgotten or invisible service. Let us not forget that in the darkest days of 2 world wars, it was the Merchant Navy and, of course, the Royal Navy alongside which ensured our survival as a nation. More than a few of those men were from Inverclyde, and some never returned from the North Atlantic, the Arctic, or even from the Normandy landings. Today, hardships and separation from family and loved ones are still part of daily life for the men and women of the Royal Navy. Today of all days, we have the chance to show our support to the men and women of our armed forces. That is, those who currently serve and also our veterans, cadets and their families. Inverclyde salutes the men and women of the Royal Navy, and we recognise your continuing contribution to this country and your sacrifices, past and present. On a personal note, I do hope that this short film affords you some consolation for your service and for your sacrifices. Thank you.
102 Field Squadron is currently part of 7-1 Engineer Regiment, and we've been based here in different forms in Paisley since 1885. 7-1 Engineer Regiment are part of the Corps of Royal Engineers, who we've just celebrated our 300th birthday as well. The primary role of an army reservist would be to support the regular army, whether that's at home or overseas. And I think if you look back in history, an army reservist has been in every major operation that we've had, and I suppose most recently Iraq and Afghanistan. More recently, army reserves are now taking on more UK resilience-based taskings, such as supporting the police, the fire service or the NHS. And that could be seen very recently with supporting the COVID-19 pandemic, building Nightingale hospitals, testing teams, vaccination teams.
Armed Forces Day gives us the opportunity to show our support for the men and women who make up the Armed Forces community, from currently serving troops to service families, veterans, reservists and cadets. All across the country, people will be showing their support in different ways, and while celebrations or commemorations may be a wee bit different this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm sure they will be just as heartfelt and meaningful as any other year. Here in Renfrewshire, we have a strong military history. The Renfrewshire Fortress Royal Engineers was a Scottish volunteer unit of the British Army, and it was under various titles since 1886, and they've been mobilised for various conflicts throughout the world. I am very proud that my own son is a reservist here in Paisley. Also remembered today with pride here in Renfrewshire is our connection with the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders and their long association with the area. It means a lot that we are able to take this day to honour their historic links with the area. They continue to be remembered with pride, and their link with Paisley remains as strong as it ever was. Of course, any military battalion needs a home, and Paisley is home to barracks that were built in the early 1800s and are still standing, some of which were built in response to one of Scotland's most interesting pieces of history, the Radical War, also known as the Scottish Insurrection of 1820. The buildings themselves are about to enter another phase in their own history as we seek a new purpose for them, and I hope that we can do our military history justice. Today, I want to express my sincere thanks on behalf of all of the people of Renfrewshire to our Armed Forces community, past and present, who work to keep us safe and protected and ensure we live in peace. And their efforts have been especially recognised during the COVID pandemic. Your efforts are appreciated more than you will ever know.
Armed Forces Day is important because it gives us a day to show our respects for those who are in the armed forces. I wanted to join the cadets because I seen the stall at Renfrewshire Park on Armed Forces Day 2016, and it looked like it would be something I enjoyed with all the teamwork and outdoor activities. The most rewarding thing for me is watching the younger cadets that come in, grow up and achieve things that they never thought they could.
Armed Forces Day is always an important date in my diary. It's a chance to show our support for the men and women who make up the Armed Forces community, from currently serving troops to service families, veterans and cadets who are so dedicated and committed to our country. Like last year, we are unable to mark Armed Forces Day in our usual manner, but this does not mean that Armed Forces Day in 2021 is any less important, and I hope you are able to take the time to show your support virtually. As Provost of East Renfrewshire, I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about just some of the hard work the RAF undertake every day of the year to help protect our nation. The RAF is a collaboration of many dedicated professions, including pilots, aviation engineers, RAF police, air traffic controllers and nurses. They have all worked together for over 100 years to defend the skies of Britain and project Britain's power and influence around the world. Ready at a moment's notice, night or day, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. The RAF works with partners around the world to strengthen national and international security and to protect the interests and influence of the UK and our allies, to monitor potential threats to the UK airspace and responsible for protecting the UK's air and space capabilities against cyber attack. The RAF are also ready to provide urgent assistance in an emergency, from floods in the UK to the Ebola outbreak in Africa and the devastating hurricanes in the Caribbean. Thank you to each and every one of our service personnel for your continued bravery and efforts.